Thanks to everyone here this afternoon for this presentation, and I really hope that you're able to take a couple of ideas that we've been able to implement in CBA over the last couple of years in the environment space and apply them in the context of your own organisation. And every organisation is different. Some of you may have tackled the tested environments problem head on and have made some great inroads in the way that your own environments are being managed currently. But hopefully there are some other ideas that you may not have come across that you might be able to pick up today. So let's hope that that's the case. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of tag team. A lot of people ask me, what do I do in my job? I delegate a lot. So I'm going to be delegating part of this presentation to one of my team members, Steve Yanazelli, who's out down the front here. Steve has been part of our team for a couple of years now, I think. Steve? Yep, about nearly 2 years. Recruited into the environments management team and has been instrumental in helping us design and implement a number of process improvement initiatives. So I thought it'd be very prudent to have Steve share the stage today and deliver part of the session. Before we move into the core part of the presentation, I'll be providing a bit of context about the CBA testing organisation, just to give you a little bit of an idea of who we are, what we do, and then we'll deep dive into the core part of the session, which is around test environment management. But before I kick the slides off, I just want to get a handle on who or what proportion of this room feel that things can be done to improve the availability of their test environments for their testers. I'm glad to hear that. Otherwise it'd be an early day. Good, right, so the next few slides will give you a bit of context around the CBA testing practice, I suppose. I'll quickly go to the agenda first, of course. We'll talk about our core services, what we do and who our customers are, and then we'll go into the core part, which is why do we have test environment management. Right, at the macro level, we are a team, a fairly large team. We consume a lot of dollars. Last count, I think it was about 750 professional testers that form part of the Enterprise Testing and Assurance Group, which I head. And we have a diverse team, and some located, majority located in Sydney, but we have many located offshore as well. When developing our plans and deciding where we're going to invest, and of course, to improve environment availability, you need to make investments. You need to make investments in people, their salaries, in tools possibly, in process improvement. So getting access to investment funds is something that is always hard. We are no different to any other business unit in the organisation who may want to make an investment, and we have to put up a business case. But before we put up a business case, we obviously have to be able to demonstrate to senior management, the CIO, that we are aligned to the bank strategy or the strategy of the IT organisation. And we developed, we have a new strategy this year, but we've had strategies since our inception, which was back in 2007. We came together as an enterprise team about 4 years ago. But every year we refresh our strategy, realign it to the enterprise goals and objectives, and we use that as the basis to guide us and determine where we're going to invest our dollars, whether it's in automation, whether it's in people, whether it's in process improvement, whether it's in infrastructure. So we've developed our strategy, and this strategy, which we call it our RACE strategy, reliability, agility, culture and efficiency, it provides, if you like, a framework or guidance to us when determining what we're going to do and how we then are going to, I suppose, answer questions. If the CIO says, well, what are you doing to improve efficiency? What are you doing to improve reliability of our ATM networks or our internet banking platform or our mobile banking platform? So what are you doing? How are you helping us as an organisation be reliable, be agile and have a culture that drives trust and relationships. So our strategy is linked to that, and it helps us guide us in terms of driving down into the testing organisation and working out how we're going to address some of these objectives. So the Enterprise Testing and Assurance Organisation is made up of a number of groups, or call it centres of excellence within a shared services organisation. We are a shared services organisation. Projects pay for our services. We have to have very good resource and demand planning capability in order to match resources and demand. We have test managers, we have performance testers, we have automation engineers, we have process improvement specialists, and we have an environments and release management capability as well. So we cut across pretty much all aspects of a managed testing service. So we can provide consulting services to our business units around automation, frameworks, performance testing, you name it. Current count, about 750 professionals. At any point in time, 200 to 300 testing engagements. Some might be in the feasibility phase of a project. Our methodology is fairly robust. Our project management methodology and our business case methodology is fairly robust. So we're fortunate that we typically are engaged early in the project life cycle, or the investment life cycle, I should say, and we're able to provide high-level estimates to the project sponsors. We're able to give them information around environments even that a project may need to invest in if the test environments that we currently have may not meet the needs of a particular project. So that's goodness, because last thing you want is you want to start doing your real testing and you haven't got the infrastructure to do your testing on. So early engagement is an important thing for us, and we provide services, as I said, to the entire CBA group, from our ComSec share trading platform, the retail bank, which covers mortgages, credit cards, ATMs, EFTPOS, all of the channels and devices that traditionally you would interact with, and all the back-end systems that support the retail bank. Institutional and global markets organisation, finance, HR, risk, marketing, business and corporate banking, funds management, insurance, general insurance, life insurance, superannuation. We also provide testing services for the IT organisation as well, when the IT organisation needs to implement its own solution of some type, or may be implementing new infrastructure. So we provide, again, as a shared services capability, we provide testing services back to IT. And also within that enterprise services function there, we have all of our back office areas, the areas that look after mortgage processing or credit card back office processing or dishonour processing. They've got their own systems and applications, and we provide testing services for them as well. In fact, I'll talk about this slide. We commenced I think I said before that we started up as a shared services organisation back in 2007. New CIO came on board, wanted to shake up the organisation, had a look at how we do development, how we do project management, how we do release management, how we do testing, etc., and basically said, this is not good, you need to do it better. And from that point on, we had the mandate, I suppose, from the CIO to go and address testing holus bolus, looking at it from a tools perspective, a process perspective, environments perspective, you name it. Open up the whole kit and caboodle and pull it apart and put it back together again. It was pretty much the direction that we had. I was fortunate. I was asked to lead that new organisation, and since then we've decided, I suppose back then we decided to use a structure to drive our whole process improvement, whether it's environment improvement or whatever it might be. And we chose TPI, and many of you would be familiar with the TPI methodology, test process improvement. We've recently switched across to TPI Next, which is the next generation of TPI. And we've been using TPI since 2007 to help us drive our maturity, if you like, across all aspects of of testing. So again, for those of you who are familiar with TPI, it covers test environments, it covers stakeholder commitment, test strategy, or test organisation, communication, reporting, a whole lot. And we've systematically been focusing on each aspect of our test capability and making investments in those areas to, one, standardise things, eliminate duplicate tools. As an example, when I first came into the role, we had every product that you can name across the organisation that was used for test case management and defect management. We now have one. And that's been an important part of our journey to consolidate and optimise. In recent times, we've also started looking at some of the internal measures and metrics that we've been capturing to look at how efficient we are, how effective our testing is, and started to look at how well we're performing, I suppose, relative to the industry. And the Ross report, the recent Ross report, the 2010 report, is a very valuable document for us because it's helped us steer into what is happening in the software testing industry, at least in Australia, and try and understand how are we performing relative to the industry. And that's been important for us because, one, it helps us understand where we need to do more work, but also it provides confidence to our stakeholders, the CIO, and all senior management, that we're not just sort of sitting there and just consuming dollars, because we're an expensive resource. 700 people is probably a budget of about $80 million a year just in testing. And we make up about 20% of the total IT shop in the bank. So it's a fairly sizable organisation. So industry benchmarking important, keeps us honest, gives the CIO and the stakeholders confidence that we know what we're doing, or at least we hope we know what we're doing. So through that journey of process improvement, we've needed to develop scorecards and benchmarks and performance dashboards, and this is just a sample of some of the, this has got six of the internal measures, and I think there's some benchmarking that we've done there as well, that we use in our strategic dashboard. So every month, every quarter, every year, we will look at our performance, we'll look at how we're tracking, are we improving, are we going backwards, and that dashboard is both at an organisational level, and we're doing quite a bit of work right now to sort of try and drill it down to even a business unit level, so we can go to the heads of, say, the managing director of, say, ComSec, and if he's got any concerns about the money that he spends on testing, that we can demonstrate very specifically to him that we're tracking pretty good or not relative to how we're tracking across the organisation, or we can even compare how we're performing across business unit. And quite an important aspect of our work is steering into our measures and our metrics and ensuring we are in control. And we've been doing quite a lot of work in this space, and as I said before, using wherever we can get access to industry data, like the Ross report, we use that and overlay that on our own internal metrics. So things like process improvement, customer satisfaction. We've been tracking customer satisfaction since 2007, and obviously very dissatisfied customers back in 2007, and year on year we've been pushing the customer satisfaction levels up a notch. In terms of staff engagement, many dissatisfied staff. We've now turned that around, and we're tracking close to the 4.4, 4.5 out of 5 sort of in terms of internal staff satisfaction. We're talking about test professionals here. We also track our resource quality. How many professional testers do we have? How many people do we have who are certified in, say, IS2QB? And how do we fare relative to the industry? And of course, production incident. So we've got to develop an internal index around how well we're doing in terms of doing our job to mitigate the number of defects that are found in production. And as you can see, since 2008, in that in this graph here, the number of severity 1, severity 2 and 3 incidents have been trending downwards, and this is an index calculated based on the number of man days in a particular enterprise release, so that's been trending downwards. And we're starting to produce these enterprise level dashboards, as I said, by business unit, as well as at the organisational level. And then finally, environment availability, and as you can see there, we have been able to pick some data out from the Ross report around how is the industry tracking around environment availability. Of course, it's always sort of a bit of context, you know, what are we talking about when we talk about environment availability, what environments, what's an environment is even sometimes hard to define. But as you can see, we've had some challenges, particularly in this area here. I call it Environment A. The Environment A is typically our retail, business banking, and our core interfacing channels, our online channels, our internet banking, our IVRs, and it's probably the most complex test environment domain that we have in the bank. We have other environments, say, for example, that third bar that's got 98%, that might be our ComSec share trading test environment, which is fairly stable and availability is quite high. But most of our testing activity actually occurs in the environment, which was or sitting at 78% of availability. And if you think about 78% availability, that's not good, because that means that your testers are not productive. And if you do some calculations, and we've done many calculations to work out what it's actually costing us whenever we have an environment issue, many millions of dollars per annum goes out the window through lost productivity. So our business case to invest in environment management services and address deficiencies with process and with infrastructure was easy to justify. We took a case up to the leadership team, the CIO, got the tick. So everything that we do, as I said, comes with a business case, comes with an investment, and we need to be able to show the return on investment, and we're doing that with our environment strategy. Right. Okay. I'm going to hand over to Steve Galazelli, who I introduced earlier on, and Steve will take you through the details of the environment management processes that we've implemented. Steve?
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so now that Mike's filled you in on the strategic agenda, I'll try to bore you with the details. First up, though, I just want to address a topic of concern. When Mike asked his question about investment in environment availability, there's quite a lot of CBA hands that went up, so guys, I'll speak to you about that later. All right, so from the strategic level, we can see that there's an investment to be made in environments. As Mike was just saying, environment downtime is quite costly to the bank's bottom line, with up to 30 to 40% of environment issues putting a halt to testing, or 30 to 40% of testing being halted by environmental issues, rather. Obviously, it's a test environment, it's not a production environment, so your controls are a bit lax. Your processes have been rapidly evolved in the nature of agility. So some significant improvements can be made by implementing basic structure, basic frameworks to increase your availability. Dedicated test environment management, especially with the breadth of the enterprise that we're dealing with. We've got projects coming from all over the bank with all different drivers. So a basic management or a centralisation of that can again offer further benefit. And on top of that, obviously, process improvements, driving improvements on the back of that. So I'll give you, we'll start with looking at a bit of the CBA context. I'll talk about a little bit of the framework that we use to manage our improvement initiatives. We'll talk about some of the trends we've been able to pull out of our environment space, and then we'll delve deeper into what are the results of some of our initiatives. So hold on to your seats. Right, so we've got about 40 to 50 concurrent projects running in our environments. These projects range from sizes of $1 billion down to a couple of thousand for quick fixes and things like that. So the complexity or the demand is quite large. We have 4 identical integrated environments. So you'll see T0, T2, T4 and T5 test are our labels. They comprise of about, these are approximations, about 220 applications and components, all integrated. There's obviously a slight gap, about a 10 to 15% gap against production on these environments, and they're components and applications that either has no cost benefit in setting them up, or there's a manual process that we can test against. We also have, smaller environments, as Mike was saying, that environment A, B, or C that might have more uptime, but they're easier to manage, that are purpose for specific reasons, such as our T1, our failover environment, our T7, our core migration IDR environment, etc., etc. Now, supporting such a large enterprise and demand coming from everywhere, you can see the sort of channels of applications coming through. One of the main ones is business intelligence, so we like to think of ourselves as a smart organisation. We've got marketing systems, 93 applications alone. You can start to see in the context of our environment management why we're driving these process improvements, why it's such a necessity. We've got a huge amount of demand, and we've also got a huge, vastly complex environment to manage. We'll have a look at what the technology stack under these applications look like. Obviously, you've got your 5 standard layers of technology, application, database, OS, net comms, and hardware. In that technology stack, we've got in addition of 35 different vendors supporting us. So in a test environment scenario, not only are you juggling the act of a plethora of applications, you're juggling that against where on the technology stack is the application failing, if it is failing, and which vendor does that component of that application sit with. So you can start to see that the management complexity is growing and growing, especially when you're dealing with multiple environments. So we've got all up about 1,200 different components we're trying to juggle here across the project portfolio. So what are some of the key challenges in the test environments? Obviously, do we have sufficient environments? So projects are always after agility. They want to move at a rapid pace, deliver their outcomes to the business and move on. So can we support the project portfolio coming through? Can we support the horizon? Do the projects understand what the test environment resource capacity is, and what it means for their projects and what it means for their business cases? And that goes back into what Mike was saying about having a robust project management methodology that we can tap into estimations and things early when it comes to test environments. Right off that is environment provisioning and evolution. Obviously, a lot of these projects that we're dealing with are delivering enhancements to the production space, obviously, but also new applications and components to our production. So how do we manage keeping the test environment investment that we've made to date rolling forward? How do we manage getting those components and justifying their costs going into the test environments across multiples? Maintenance of those of existing applications. So when a project comes in, makes a change, we've got to roll it out to all the other environments as well. And the cost and provisioning of that. And of course, probably the fundamental pain point that we all deal with and that we're sort of talking to today is environment stability. So how do we keep the agility, keep the pace for the project portfolio, but manage the agility without putting the right controls in to manage it, but without slowing it down. Especially considering, again, we're rolling it out to multiple environments. So a code development that goes into a T2, for example, won't be relevant for a T5. It will need to be tailored to match the integration there. Right, so that's the context. I think we all got a pretty good picture of what we're dealing with here. This is, a lot of you will probably see this before, it's a fairly basic Itil methodology, and this is sort of our framework for process governance that we've implemented. You've got your input, your process, and your output. So we've pillared that, demand, change, and release, and how we deal with them and flow through to the data, tools, environment setup, and obviously outcomes, your knowledge, your test environment stability, your consistent and accurate information, your data synchronicity, early detection of defects and trends and things like that. So this is a fairly simple governance model. I won't talk to it too much because a lot of you have seen it before, and it's fairly logical. Off that framework is sort of where I'll talk to a little bit more and where we've directed our initiatives. So in the organisation space, we're talking about the management of the details of these environments. So you've got, as I said, 220 components, applications, you've got IP addresses, server farms, VIPs, firewalls all attached to them. So management of that information. We need to be organised to be able to manage the demand, what it actually requires. We need to be organised to protect our asset of IP. The process, so this is the management of the expectations and the delivery of the outcomes, and that's internally what teams engage with what teams to deliver the outcome. You'll see on the right hand side there, part of our process maturity journey was to develop a range of service catalogues, engagement models and things for each internal team to Mike's department here, to make sure that we're operating as a well-oiled machine so that our output at the end of the day is clear, concise and effective. Automation, obviously, that then we start to, once we've implemented our basic process maturity, we start to work together internally well. We can start to look for opportunities to automate, to increase our efficiency in delivering the outcome, which it's all about at the end of the day. And then obviously the metrics, tracking how we're performing, 2, tracking how effective our improvement initiatives are performing and what kind of return we're getting. So here's just a basic example talking to that organisation level. So we centralise the management of our planning. So all the entire project portfolio goes to one centralised planning function. That planning function outputs a forward schedule of change, or environment management strategy, in the shorter term and the longer term. Here's just a quick example, a bit of a visual of what the shorter term one would look like, so that the stakeholders are aware of what the production state's going to look like, what's happening in each test environment, what they can expect an outage, etc., etc. So fairly logical stuff, but I guess it's about having the right structure in place as far as centralised management and the right processes in place to communicate these out to the stakeholders. So trends. This is where we start to talk about the trends in the environment space, and we'll see through our process maturity and through starting to gather the right information, having it through the centrally managed channels, we've been able to understand what the trends are in our environments, what's breaking, how often it's breaking, etc., etc. So I'll start at the top left of screen. Obviously, that's sort of a benchmark for us to talk about how we're reducing the impacts of environmental defects, or are we reducing the number of environmental defects. You'll see we're tracked quite well over the last little while, and moving forward we'll hope to maintain that. Off to the bottom left now. So not only are we tracking environmental defects in the space, obviously as a department-wide initiative and process maturity, we're tracking data, deployment, configuration, all sorts of environmental defects causes or root causes. And this allows us to understand where the need for investment is, understand where the gaps are and what we can do to better ourselves as far as environment availability goes. I mean, obviously to a tester, we classify it as an environment issue if it's a server down or a firewall down, but a deployment issue or a configuration issue is an environment down to a tester. So it's that 30 to 40% I was talking about earlier covers this sort of stuff as well. So it helps us get insight into where to focus our initiatives. Obviously there in that sample graph, configuration would be the point of call. What can we do better in the configuration space to make sure we're putting the right quality assurances in place to make sure that we're not impacting the environment uptime. Environment data and top right now, environment data and deployment defects by external vendors. So this is, again, the trends we're picking up help us to manage our vendor relationships. As I mentioned before, we've got 35 plus vendors, multiple technologies. By doing the right mini PIR, if you will, against the defects and against the environment blockers, we can start to use that in our negotiations with our vendors, start to use that to drive our vendors for better performance, more bang for buck, if you will. Environment data and deployment by internal teams. So unfortunately for CBA internals, it's not only that we track these trends against our vendors, we also do it internally to make sure we're delivering what our stakeholders are expecting of us. So that sort of paints the picture of a trend. Now we really go into the micro detail of these metrics. So again, you know, I'm talking through this, but we're bearing in mind that this is all driving process improvement. Yeah. So this is coming off the back of how can we better availability of test environments in a complex environment. So to the micro level now, we can start to see this is some of our sample graphs, and these are all automated off the test scenarios. So you know, we start to gauge the impact of lost hours against internal teams and vendors, blacked out for IP reasons. And then beyond that, we investigate the root cause. So you'll see there the red is back-end configuration. So we can say to vendor X, I believe this one is focused on the 21% of the pie chart. You know, a large component of our impact is coming from this vendor. A large component of that impact is this type of impact. So it's fairly clear where we can then pinpoint our improvement initiatives. Is it process? Is it time? Is it, you know, the resources we have under it, et cetera, et cetera. So we get a very clear understanding of where to focus our attention. Thank you very much. And then below that, you'll see that we also track a fix rate. So we want to be able to benchmark, you know, when we're getting the issues, are we turning them around quickly, or are we juggling them back and forward between teams? So we can also use that. Okay, so you know, you'll see that we use a lot of trends, a lot of detailed metrics to drive where our attention lies, and I guess at the end of the day, it's very important to track these improvement initiatives. So here's just a sample scorecard from our side of the fence of, you know, tracking the initiatives, making sure that we're setting targets and meeting them. That's very basic stuff. I'm sure you've all got your own scorecards internally, but it's just more of a point. You know, we've got goals, and we track to them. We'll have a look at now one of the more detailed outputs of one of the process improvements. So I think somewhat relative to the workshops you might have been in today. So obviously one of the improvement initiatives for us was to move our physical-based environments to a virtualized service, an internal cloud, if you will. And you know, so that's tracked against a very detailed, again, set of return on benefit or return on investment rules. So just a quick run over it, because it's fairly self-explanatory. You know, as we reduced our physical investment split in the yellow there and increased the virtual in the blue, we saw a pretty dramatic cost reduction from our initial state of, you know, 100% down to sort of 50% of what we were paying. But you'll see the red there talks to capacity. So, you know, we're spending half the money, but we've almost doubled our capacity in the environment space. So we've removed a lot of environmental bottlenecks. You know, we've set up server farms on the virtual networks and things like that to enable, you know, more reliable service, better speed, et cetera, et cetera. That, you know, the graph talks to the strict financial benefits, but obviously there's a lot of internal non-tangible benefits when you talk cloud and virtualization. You know, we've got scalable resources now. If all our testers are in one T environment, well then all our CPU and memory usage is harnessed into that test environment to make sure the speed, and we're not getting, you know, timeout issues and things like that. We've also gone from, you know, a 27-day or a 1 month almost provisioning of application and component to, you know, we say here on the graph an hour, but depending on the component and application, it could be as little as 20 minutes. So, you know, these are greatly increasing our speed as a service and our agility. Guys, I got through it pretty quick. I took my little way through it there, but so that sort of sums it up. If there's any questions, please feel free.